Okay, Tov. Today's daf is Daf Hayomi, but Messias Milan Prachenical based on the Sunnah Batzar Shipya. Of course, we've been discussing the issue of if a person is a shomer and the item is lost or stolen from him, and he says he'll just pay for it. So it's like he owns it now. Why? Because he said it works retroactively, because the owner effectively said, if you lose it and you don't take a shvu, you don't try to absolve yourself, but rather you take responsibility and you pay for it, then I'm giving it to you from right now. That's how we made the kinyan. That's what was the discussion in the Mishnah. Now we're continuing on with this discussion. We're at the wide lines on Lamed Hayam off the two dots. So who gavra the afkid kipe gabe chabre? A man deposited some jewelry, like the nose rings, whatever, with somebody else. So you have a mafkid and a nifgad, a mafkid and a shomer. Amalei, and he said to him, so the mafkid said to the shomer, Havli kipoy, don't give me my rings. I'd like my jewelry back. Amalei lo yadana hefa osminu. I don't know where I put them. You ever hear that before? I don't know where I put it. Also came to Nachman, they came before of Nachman, they had a din Torah. Amalei kol lo yadana pshiusi, saying I don't know, that's negligence. Right? Zil shalom, go pay. You don't know where it is. That's not an answer. That's considered negligence. Rav Nebenzahl said this is what did Cain tell Hashem after he killed Hevel? He says, "Ayeh Hevel achicha, vayomer lo yadati hashomer achi anochi." Mashma that if he would be a shomer, he would be responsible. He says, "I don't know, right? Am I a shomer? Mashma, if I would be a shomer, I would be responsible. You're a shomer, you're responsible." That's not an answer. You ever go to the bank and say, "Where's my money?" We don't know where we put it. Kind of answers that. That's not an answer. You have to pay. Okay. Lo shilim. He didn't have any money, so he didn't pay him. Azor of Nachman. So they came before the court again. He didn't pay. He was supposed to pay. He didn't pay. Agvila padmine. And Rav Nachman seized his house. Okay. You have assets. He seized his house and he gave it to the mafkid. Well, once he saw, I guess as he was cleaning out his house, he found them, right? After the deed was handed over from the shomer to the mafkid, at giving him his house, he found the jewelry. The shomer found the jewelry. Meanwhile, while they found the jewelry, the price of the jewelry had gone up. Now, think about it. Is this comparable to the case in our Mishnah, right? He paid for it with his house, effectively, right? Took his house away. The shomer didn't have any money, so he paid for the house, paid for the jewelry by giving him his house. Who owns the jewelry now? L'chara the shomer, right? So the price went up. Amr of Nachman, so l'chara the price went up. What do you say? Amr of Nachman, Hadri keep the Mariah, give everything back. Give the jewelry back to the original owner. It's gone up in price. Hadra Padal Amara, and give the house back to the shomer. Do-over, right? Rava. So Rava was sitting there and he was saying, wait a minute, we were learning Hamafkid. We just had this mission, right? Rava, Have Yisib Nekamed, Rav Nachman. I happened to be learning in front of Rav Nachman there. I was in his yeshiva. Upirkan Hamafkid Have. It was this parak Hamafkid, the first mission that we just discussed, right? And when the shomer pays for it, he acquires it. He got the kefil, you remember? Then they found the ganav. He gets to keep the kefil. And I said to him, what about our Mishnah? The Mishnah says, Shilam v'lo ratza lishava. Mishnah said, let's say he just said pay for it. Remember, the shomer said, I'll pay for it. Didn't want to swear, right? And so he gets to keep it. So just like he gets to keep the kefil in our Mishnah when afterwards they found the ganav, here also he should be able to keep the jewelry, which had gone up in price substantially, presumably more than the real estate. V'lo aharuli. I pointed out that kasha to Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman didn't even answer me. Cases aren't capital. The shopper of it, and he did good that he didn't respond to me, right? In other words, he's right. He's right that he didn't respond to me. My question was not a guva. My timer. In the Mishnah, he didn't take him to court. What happened? He said to the shomer, "Where's my item?" And it was stolen. He says, "You know what? I'm going to pay for it, and that's it." So again, how does the kinyan work? We discussed it right after the Mishnah. Kinyan works because effectively the depositor, the mafkid, says, "Look, I'm giving you this item to watch. If something happens to it and you take full responsibility and you pay for it right away, then then it's yours. It's yours from right now, and you get to keep any whatever happens to it. You get kefil because of it. The price goes up because of it. Fine. That was his intention. But over here it's different. Why? Because over here he didn't want to pay. Just the opposite. He said, I don't know where it is. So the court told him to pay. He didn't pay. They had to take his house away. So in a case like that, the owner didn't really want to give. Didn't really want to give it. The owner didn't want to give the jewelry to the shomer in lieu of the house. It was just forced upon him. The court had to seize it because there was nothing else to do. So now we get to the issue of a shuma. Well, a shuma, as we discussed before, is an assessment or a court evaluation saying, look, this guy can't pay can't pay what he owes. We're going to go find his assets, go find his property, anything that he has. We'll assess it and we'll get the payment back for the creditor as from there. Now, in a case like that, when a court does that, can that be retracted? Can that be retracted? In other words, a guy can't pay his loan. He owes somebody $1,000. He can't pay his loan. So the court says to the Malva, okay, go see if he has any property. Go check it out. Search for his property. If you find any property, we'll come. We'll see his whole procedure. We'll announce it. We'll have an auction to see if anybody will pay what they'll pay for it. And when we get that money, you'll be able to keep that money. Okay, fine. Sometimes he keeps the property itself, or he doesn't have any. Not something you can auction off. Whatever he has. In this case, he gave him his house. Can that be retracted? That's the question. A shuma is a court assessment, evaluation. Can it be retracted? So Gemara says, "Lameimer the Savra of Nachman shuma hadar." Does that prove? That's a question. Does a shuma, can it be retracted after the lova, the guy who owes the money, whether it be a shomer or a lova, whoever owes the money cannot pay, and they seized his assets and they paid with his assets. If it's cash, fine. Then whatever it was, cash or whatever, the item might be sold, whatever it was, but they get cash for it, or they give the item itself. Can that be retracted? Like over here, where if Nachman had said, take his house, right? He can't pay for the jewelry, take his house. And then he says, give it back. So that does Rav Nachman say that Shuma can be retracted? Where there's no proof. Shani Hossam, the Shuma does. You can't prove anything from there, even though we're going to see that a Shuma can be retracted. But you can't prove anything because the whole thing was a mistake. Why? The jewelry wasn't gone. The jewelry was just in the wrong drawer. The guy couldn't find it. He said, I don't know where it is. I've been looking up his eye down. He forgot that he put it in his safe or whatever, wherever he put it. But he had it. So the whole shuma was made under a mistake. It wasn't like it was lost and he can't pay. The guy can't pay. He can't pay. So you go and you take his assets. There's no mistake about it. He doesn't have the money to pay. Here, the whole thing was a mistake. So you can't prove anything from there. Can't prove Nachman's Shita from there. But still, even though you can't prove it from there, Amri Nardoi, in Nardoi, that town in Babel, they said, an evaluation of a court, an assessment, where they seized his property to pay off a loan, let's say, and then the guy, let's say, comes up with the money later on, he can pay it off and get his property back. That assessment can be retracted. Yomar Meimer, says, I come from Nardoi, this feel I hold Shumuhadalola. It's not limited to 12 months, to a year. It can always back. The Hilchos of Shumar that's the Gemara Paskins. A Shumar can Hadal goes back. Why? Not Mikara did, but rather Mishum Shnemer Vasisa Yashar Ato B'nei Hashem. You're supposed to do the right thing. The fact is that this property belonged to the Lova. He couldn't pay it, but now that he can pay, it's the right thing to do to give him back his thing. Technically, the court has a right because he's at Hefker, Bes and Hefker. They can do whatever they want when it comes to money matters. But still, they said it goes back. Asisi Yashar Ato, that was his house. That was his property, whatever, give it back. That's the halacha. Pshita shamulei lebal chov. Now let's say, listen to this. How normally is an assessment and seizing property done? There's a bal chov, there's a creditor, right? And he's owed money, and the loba can't pay, so he seizes property. Let's say they show a chov, and what are we saying now? That the halacha is that if later on the loba comes up with the money, he could pay it off and get his property back, his assets, whatever it was. Let's say they did that. They seized the property. Let's say the Balchov collected based on a court assessment of that sort, where they seized the property of the Lova. And then the creditor himself, he had other creditors. That's usually what happens in the finance business, right? One creditor lends to another one. This creditor, he owed money to somebody else, and they seized that from him because he couldn't pay his. So he paid it off. He paid his own creditor that way. I'm really like, so can you collect from the second creditor? He says, yes. Lo adif at migaver da'asas minei. You're no stronger than the one that came from. Since the first bachov, the first creditor can have the assessment retracted, right? You have to give it back if the guy can pay off the loan. The second one also, he's no stronger than the first one. However, what happens after receiving the assessment? What's bothering you, Michael?
Because there are two people who owe money here.
Right.
So
the creditor owes there's a lova who owes to the first creditor, and then the creditor himself owes to another creditor.
So who comes up with the money in order to get the house?
No, if whoever comes up with the money gets his assessment back. So he pays off the creditor, and the creditor can then get it back from the second guy. The second guy is no stronger than the first guy. However, if let's say the person who received the assessment, right, the seizor, the one who seized the property based on the court, let's say he sold it to somebody else. After he seized, let's say, the property, he got the house. The guy took his house. That's a standard case, right? The guy couldn't pay up the loan. The house was mortgaged. He took the house, and he sold the house, or he died and inherited it to somebody else. He bequeathed it to somebody else, to his family member, or if Yav gave it to somebody else. Now, in those cases, these people were intending on getting the land. The guy who bought the property for sure. The guy who was given it the property, even the person who yarshin it, he wants land. He doesn't just want cash. So these people went into in order to get the property. But so they didn't come in to get cash. So here's the point: a court assessment could be retracted. We said even forever. The halacha is right, but that's only if after the person who received the assessment, the seizure, the creditor, still has it. He still has it, or he paid off another loan with it. But if he sold it to somebody, or bequeathed it to somebody, or gave it to somebody, no, because then the guy bought it as land. So it's too late, too bad. In other words, the court assessed that you couldn't pay your loan, so the court took your property, gave it to the creditor. If the creditor still has it, or he paid off another creditor with it, it can be retracted. But if he sold it to somebody, the other guy bought the property. I paid for it. I don't want my money back. I want the property. Shomala Leisha. What happens if a woman was given property that was assessed? So let's say she was the creditor. She was a creditor, and the guy couldn't pay a loan, and they gave the property to her. Then she's married, right? So she got married to somebody. Or she was the borrower. She was the lova, and they took property from her. Right? And so she got married in Mesa. The Baal, what's the husband considered? If she died, the husband inherits his wife. But his halacha is not like a regular heir, but rather the Chachamim gave him the halacha of a lokeach. So therefore, in the first case, where she seized the property from somebody else, she was a creditor. Then she got married. Her husband's considered like lokeach. It's as if she sold it to him. So now, if she died, if she's still there, you could say, okay, she's the creditor. If the guy could pay her while she's alive, she'd have to give it back. It's retractable. However, if she died and her husband inherited her, he has halacha like a purchaser. We just said that if the person was married, well, we don't know what he married her for. That doesn't make any difference. It makes no difference why he married her.
There is a difference between this and a pure love.
Right. Because over here the Chachamim, we'll see. As we see, the Chachamim gave him halacha of a lokeach.
The difference between
okay, so that's what we're saying now. That if he's a lokeach, we'll see that the Orish is on the other side. On the side that she received the assessment, right? She received as the creditor. Now her husband inherited her. He's considered a purchaser. So it's as if she sold it to him. If she sold it to him, it doesn't go back. In other words, after she died, the person who was collected from her debtor, wants to come and pay off the loan and get the property back. No, he's considered like he bought it from her. So therefore, the Gemara says, lo mahater, he doesn't have to give it back because he's lokeach. But lo madrin and lay. Now the other way around, this is what you're asking. Why is he Western sees Yorish or he's lokeach? Lo madrin and lay. You don't give it back to him. This means that if his wife was the debtor, right, and she couldn't pay off her loan, and they took the property from her, right? Now, after she died, if she could pay it off, she could get it back, right? Because the property was seized from her. But if she married this guy and then she died, he is considered a lokeach. But the lokeach on the other end, don't forget, she didn't seize the property was seized from her. He wants to buy it back now. He wants to say, I'm like her, I'm her yoresh, just like She could buy it back. I want to buy it back. No. You're a purchaser. The other guy came first. A purchaser is not the same as the person himself or the heir. Below Madrinale, Dom Rav Yossi, Rav Chanina, but Usha Skina, when the Besan girl was in Usha, when they were exiled to the town of Usha, they made it the Kana Isha Shamacher Benichse Mulug, B'chai Bala, Umesa, Habal Mas Melekuchas. Let's say a woman has Nichse Mulug. What is Nichse Mulug? Property that wasn't, even if it wasn't written into the Ksuba. It was written to the Ksuba, he was responsible for it, but even wasn't written to the Ksuba. She sold the property while her husband, she can't sell the property while the husband's alive. He's entitled to use it, right? But she sold the property and then she died. And then let's say the husband, then she died. The husband can take the property back. Why? Because he's a lokech. She sold it, but he was lokech first. By marrying her, he was considered first lokech. Rashi says, take a look at Rashi, lo madrina lay, the third in the wide lines. They took property from her. When she married a Mesa, the Yarsha, husband. Now the husband wants to pay back the chov and take the property back that was seized from his wife. And he can't say, well, I'm like her, and therefore I could buy it back. No, he's simply like lokech. Well, a lokech can't do it. In other words, his rights in that property comes from being a lokech. It's not like the case where the property was seized. You seized the property and then you sold it. Then they can't take it back anymore because the guy who bought it. Here, the lokech is on the other side. The lokech is the husband of the one who was seized from. So he can't claim that I want to buy it back now. He's not considered like his wife. So therefore, if the wife was alive, she could buy it back, right? And if the wife was alive, also, and property was seized, that she seized property, she'd also have to give it back, but he doesn't have to give it back because he's a lokech. A lokech doesn't have to give property that was seized, and you can't give it back to him. You don't have to give it back to him if he wants to redeem property that was seized from her, because he's not considered a yorish, he's considered a lokech. Agve, a yorish l'char would have more of a more power to claim property that his father or mother, or that his bequeather, the one who died, would want to buy it back now. Buy back the property, understand? Buy back the property. Not the property that was seized and sold, but if he wanted to seize it from the creditor, could he seize it back? Could he take it? Could he buy it back?
If it's been indifferent, then the kids would be able to.
In the case of Benin Dichrim, that's part of the ksuba, right? Part of the ksuba says that.
In that case, they would
Right.
be Yorush.
Right, they're the Yerushas, but that's part of the ksuba. That's really because there's a prior lien before the Yerusha takes him. The Benin Dichrim says effectively that there was something was given away before death. That's different because it wasn't, you understand? Yeah. Well, here also we're talking about taking away before death, right? But what is the status of the husband really inherits her? He's really the heir. You're right that he is the heir. But in this halacha, he has halacha when it comes to this property, he has halacha like a lokech, both for his detriment and for his advantage. Because if he is the
The other way around.
the other way around, right? If he's considered lokech, so therefore, if the property was if she seized property, so it gives him an advantage. She says he's lokech. She seized property and then sold it to him effectively, so it can't be taken away. So there, the lokech is an advantage. On the other side, if property was seized from her and he wants to buy it back, right? So there the fact that he's the lokech is a disadvantage.
But his kid, he's not a natural Yorush.
Yes, he is.
Kids are.
No. If a wife dies, the husband. If a husband, let's say a couple is married, right, and she has children. They have children even together, whatever. They're a regular family, and she dies. The husband inherits her, not the kids.
So, the husband, and so what's the difference?
If she has not the bindichon is more complicated. Yeah, but the case where children would inherit her is if she had no husband and she had no family, no parents. Let's say a father would inherit her, presumably. If she didn't have a husband and she died, then either her father or her children could inherit her. But normally, a husband inherits his wife. A husband inherits his wife. That's halacha. That's the halacha. In a Torah, a husband inherits his wife. Obviously,
a Yorush stands. The difference isn't the difference that a Yorush stands. A Yorush is like
That's right.
The person.
Like the person
And so-
itself. That's
so
right.
whatever rights.
That's right. So
person
here, the husband wants to claim the rights of Yerusha in terms of taking property back that was seized from her, but we don't give him that right. We don't give him that right. Right. Now, let's say Anamid Beis now. Agbe iu b'chogo. Let's say the court didn't take away the property. It wasn't a shuma. Shuma means the court assessed it and they took it away. Right. Let's say he himself paid it back. He says, "Look, I don't have the money. I'll pay. I'll give you my house." Right. This is Leil Maharash. This Gabi Shuma Klomer Im Lo Sham Bez Lamal Bal Karfo. But the Loba gave it away himself. Says, "Please, what's up? Can he get it back now?" And I don't have any money. Come and take my house. And now he comes up with the money later on. Can he get his house back? The one says it goes back. We can't get it back. The one says doesn't go back. It's a good sale. It's a good sale. You said I don't have the money. I'll give you my house. Okay, so effectively you gave me money. I'm giving you my house. It's a sale. It's all sales final. Right? You ever see it? It's not all sales final. Right? But
not final.
No. He says he can't go back. It is final. The first opinion is machlokes Rav Achim Ravina. The one who says that it doesn't go back, he can't get it back because he says the sale is final. So I gave it on my own. I agreed to it myself. The one who says that it could go back, the deal is not final, he could get his house back. That's not a good sale. The reason he gave it to him on his own is the law didn't come to court. He was embarrassed. He couldn't pay. Listen, he couldn't pay. He was a person with a conscience, a good Jew. And he couldn't pay it back. So he said, okay, listen, take my car, take my house, take something. He didn't want to go to court and fight with him in court because he knew that it was his fault. Now, once there is a shuma, and Bezdin says, okay, you could take this property. From what point does the creditor, the one who seizes the property, from what point does he get to eat the pears on the field? Let's say it's the middle of the season and the fruits are growing and he wants the crop. From what point does he get it? So there's a three of machlokes. A drachta we had before is a decree of the court that you're allowed to go search his property. Remember, in those days they didn't have like we have records today with surveyors and all that, and what do they call the taboo and all that kind of stuff for all the properties known. So so there's when this comes up and court says he can't pay his loan and it's clear he has to pay. So the court says, and a drachta, we had this before. It's a decree of the court that you can go look for his property, go search for his property. So he says, as soon as it came into the hands of the creditor, at that point on, even though they haven't even found the property yet, he's entitled to it from that point on. Even earlier, he doesn't even have to get to his hands. As soon as the court signs on that document, that's good enough at that point. No. It could take months and months and months for this process to be completed. He can't get the price, he can't eat the payers immediately. It's from the time that the auction is finished. What do we mean by that? There's a whole procedure here. First, the court gives him a decree that you can go and search for his property. Then the guy goes, he hires people or whatever, gets lawyers, whoever does that, and he finds that he has property. Okay, they come to court, he's got these properties. The court then has to hold an auction to see what's the property is worth. Maybe somebody will pay more for it. If this guy is willing to take it, if somebody will pay more for it than the loan is, or whatever. So we'll see, he'll turn it into money at that point. Maybe somebody will buy it. He doesn't get the payers at all. So it's only from the time that the days of auction, it depends on the difference, 30 days, 90 days, whatever the courts are, whatever the rules are, from the time that the auction is completed, only then does the days of the auction, only from then would he get the property. And would be able to the payers.
Okay, so in this case, everybody agrees the payers go to him. The question is when.
The question is when, and that's only if he actually takes the payers. Because it might be that he won't even get the payers if somebody else buys the property.
But what happens if he pays back and gets his property back 6 months later? According to the sheet, where that's possible.
Right. So we're to the payers in between. Yeah. So probably he'd have to refund that also. He'd have to refund that presumably. Right.
Are you sure about those?
Right. Okay. Says the Mishnah now. Now we come to a very complicated sugya. The next few days we're going to deal with this. If you are given an item to watch, can you give that to somebody else to watch for you? Can a shomer appoint another shomer? Okay, so we're going to get into this issue now, but this issue really is we're going to deal with tomorrow. Can a shomer, does he have the right to give it to somebody else without permission? Without permission, right? It's like we talked about a socher of a house. We said, remember, it's not automatic. You can't sublet unless there's permission, right? You have to have permission. So what about a shomer? Pardon?
You can't make a shliach.
Oh, so that's why he's making a shliach. He's making him another shomer. Can he do it? Can he do it? That's the question. That's the question. We're going to deal with that question tomorrow. Can a shomer, without permission, give it to another shomer? I give it to him, or you say no. I gave you to you to watch. I don't trust the other guy. You can't automatically do that. It's true that a shliach can appoint another shliach. If I send you send your shliach to give a get or to mekadesh an isha, can you appoint another shliach? If it doesn't, if it's not doesn't affect my property, or I wouldn't object to it. I want to marry her or want to divorce her. Then maybe a shliach could appoint a shliach. But over here, coming to watch my item, I didn't want anybody else to guard it, whatever. So that's the question we're going to deal with tomorrow. So avoiding that issue now, because here we're going to talk about a case where a shomer did give it to somebody else, but let's say he did it with permission. Tomorrow, so let's say he did it with permission. If it without permission, it's going to be a question we're going to discuss tomorrow. Yeah.
Without permission, how can you give it to him?
How can you give it to him? That's going to be a question. Can you give it to him without permission or not? Can a shomer, is it understood? Is it implicit? You can give it to somebody else or not? That question we'll discuss. But let's assume he gave it to him with permission to give to somebody else. Listen to this carefully. A socher, a renter, is like a shomer socher, even though he's paying for it here and the shomer socher is paid, but the halachas are the same. There's a machlok is what it is, but the assumption is, the psak is that a socher is like a shomer socher. He's chayiv for gnev and aveda, pater on onsen. Socher para mechavero. Okay, so what happened over here? Ruvain borrowed a para, not borrowed, rented para from Shimon, rented it from Shimon, right? Ve'eshila la'acher, right? Rashi gives an example. I said Reuven, yes, and now he lent it to somebody else. So when you lend it, what's the halacha? The loan of the show is chayiv on everything except for meisa machmas b'lacha. Okay, so v'shela ve'eshila la'acher umeisa kedarka. Now the animal died normally, had a heart attack and died. So a shoel is chayiv to pay for that, but the shomer sacher who rented it from Reuven, from Shimon rather, Reuven rented it from Shimon, he's pater, right? Pater on shomer sacher. But here, what happened was the socher borrowed again. The socher rented it from Reuven, rented it from Shimon. Shimon's the owner. Reuven rented it from Shimon, and he lent it to, let's say, Levi, and then it died there. Yishba socher shemesa kedarka. So number one, the socher is pater if it was an accident. It did die by an accident. It was an act of God. It died. It had a heart attack. Yishba socher shemesa kedarka. V'hashoel yishalom l'socher. The shoel who borrowed it from the socher, he's responsible to pay. He has to pay the socher, the renter. Wow. Rabbi Yossi. So that's what the Gemara is. That's what the first Tanakama says. This is a fantastic, unbelievable deal. You understand here? The guy rented. Doesn't make sense, right? Reuven rented it from Shimon. Shimon's the owner. And let's assume now, because I want to get into Gemara. Shimon said, you can rent it. If you want to lend it to your friends, your family, lend it to somebody else, whatever you want to do with it, that's fine. That's okay. Just, you're paying for X amount of money. You're paying $100 for 100 days. That's it. Give it back to me after 100 days. And you have permission to lend it to somebody else. So he lent it to somebody else. And it's like he rented it during that time. And now the animal died by accident. So the lender, Shoel, has to pay the socher, the para, and the socher is off the hook because it died by accident. That's what Tanakama says. Rabbi Yossi, you're doing business with my animal? You're making money on my animal? It's my animal. I'm Shimon. You're making money on no. The animal has to be given back to the owner, meaning the Shoel is effectively rented. So when it has effectively borrowed it from the owner, meaning when the owner gave it to Reuven, rented it to Reuven, he effectively said, listen, if you want to lend it to somebody else, fine, then they'll take your place. But if the other guy is a borrower and is not paying for it, he's going to be responsible for accidents again. Now, we paskin like Rav Yossi. So don't ask me, how does this make sense? The Tanakama, we don't paskin like him. Now, he's saying a far out thing. The Gemara is going to explain even farther out. But effectively, we're saying over here that the owner, Shimon, loses the animal, right? Because it died by accident, and the guy who rented it is not responsible for it. It was an accident. But the socher who rented it is making money on this. All right. I understand. How can the socher get the money here? How did he acquire it? Because he swore that it was an accident, that he wasn't negligent, it wasn't lost or stolen. Let the masker say, wait, you made a shvua and therefore you're off the hook. Let the masker tell the socher, I don't need you and I don't need your shvua. Don't make a shvua. I'll go make a deal with the show. Forget you. You're acquiring it by swearing that you're off the hook. I'll tell you what, forget it. I don't want your shvua. There's a show that died while the show had it. I'll go to him. You think the socher acquires it via the shvua that he makes? As soon as the animal died, and when it died, it had been borrowed from Ruvain, the renter. They had borrowed from him, and as soon as it died, he acquired it because he had lent it to this guy. This guy's responsible. The Levi, let's say, the guy who the Shoel is responsible to the renter. At that point, when it died, he acquired it. The shvu is simply to placate the balabayas, as we said, that he swears that he didn't cause any, he didn't do any damage to it. And if it's not here, he swears that it's not in his possession. Like we saw, Rav Huna said yesterday that we also have to make a shvur that it's not my rishus. I'm not hiding it. I didn't keep it. Okay, that's his point. That's how the socher requires. This is all in the Tanakama. So don't forget, we don't paskin that way. We don't paskin way. The fact is, if it was an accident and it was in the hands of the shoel owes the owner. Amar Zera. Pardon?
Who gets the carcass?
Who gets the carcass? Presumably, if it's worth anything, when we say over here the shoel has to pay the socher, if the carcass is there, presumably we would go back to, according to the Tanakama, it would still go back to the owner, right? Because the carcass is still here. So the socher has to give it back at the end of the 100 days. We're talking about he rented it $100 for 100 days. I mean, the 100 days is important. So for the next case. So yeah, if the carcass is still there and the renter is not responsible to the owner, for the animal that died, but still is owned by the owner. If the animal's there, he died, and you can give that. We go back to the owner. Amar Rav Zera. Listen to this really strange case. Amar Rav Zera. Now, what's the whole point over here? Ruvain rented it from Shimon, and then he lent it to somebody else. It's also possible when he lent it out, he lent it back to the owner, Shimon. Now, why would he do that? Because whatever, Shimon said, can I borrow it back? I know you rented it. You're not using it now. You're Shomer Shabbos, whatever, I'm not. Can I borrow it back? Amar Rav Zera, Pam Shabal Mishalman Kama Paros L'Socher. According to this, Rav Zera says it's possible that the owner will have to pay this renter, not like just simple case in the Mishnah where the renter's collecting from the show. He'll have to pay him several paros. Wow, what do you mean? Hechidami. Agramine Yomi. Reuben rented it for 100 days, $1 a day. Then he said, after he rented it, he says, you know what? I know I rented it to you. Can I borrow it back for 90 days? You really don't need it. You just wanted it sitting in front of your house. Can I borrow it back for these 90 days? And then I'll give it back to you. You'll the last 10 days, you'll be able to use it for yourself. And he paid him the rent. He paid him the rent. He paid it in advance. And now, after he paid the rent, he says, can I borrow it back? And the guy was a nice guy, said, yeah, you can have it back. Okay. For 90 days, he borrowed it back. The owner borrowed it back. Then the renter said, you know what? I know I let you use it back, but I need it myself. So I know you're entitled to it for these 90 days because I let you have it for 90 days. Maybe even we wrote it down. I need it back. Can I rent it from you again? He rented it back for 80 days out of those 90 days. So he rented it twice. Listen to this. Reuben rented it twice. All right. And then after he rented it back, again, the owner borrowed it back. This is a strange case, but just giving an example to show what could be. Again, the idea being that he still owes him now, even if he still owes him 20 days. On the first deal, I'm borrowing it back, and you'll have the last 10 days. And now I'm borrowing it back again. You'll have the last 10 days there. And now, of course, the animal died while it was in the rishus of the owner, who was the shoel. The achel, right? The achel sheila, right? Umeisa b'toch yomei shelta. The achel sheila u'sheila machayev. No, I'm sorry. The akol, I'm reading it wrong. B'toch yomei shelasa. The akol sheila v'sheila machayev chad para. Listen to this. The owner has now borrowed it twice back from the renter. On every time that he borrowed it, he owes him a para. The animal died, right? The animal died. Don't forget the periods of she'ela are concurrent, right? They're one on top of the other. So he's borrowed it twice. He's rented it twice too. The renter rented it twice, right? The rented it once and then he rented it again, and every time the guy borrowed it back. So for everyone, he's chayav a para. He's chayav one para. We're going all according to the Tanakh, and even this is only according to one of the things we'll see. We're going to machlokas about that. So he's chayav on para. He has to give him. He owes him a whole para for each one of those she'elot, and he still owes him a para to use for the last 20 days that he's left over there. I understand. Chad para. There's one animal here. I love Afka. It's gone back and forth. It went up and went out. Afka Maschiris and went out of Skiris, Viola Shela, and came Shela. Afka Mashela, Viola Skiris. So how can you talk about multiple paras? Amalei, Umi Sila Para Ba'enid the name Malehachi. If the animal would be here, you'd say, fine, just give it back. But it's not here. So I lent you a para that was in my rishus. I had rented it and I lent it to you. You didn't give it back. Yomi a para. The second time also the same thing. Mar Rashi though agrees with the first kash from Rav Meir Shapiro. Mar Rashi Amar Eino Alein Ela Shtei Paros. He has a claim only for two paros. Chada de Shela, v'chada Schiras. In other words, he agrees that there's only one par. You can't get back two par. One he has to give back, and one he has to lend him for those 20 days that he is entitled to rent. Remember, he rented it for 100 days, then he rented it back for 80 days, right? Then the guy said this, but he's still entitled to those the 10-day difference in each case. First, Shum Sheila Achasi, there's one name of Sheila, but Shum Scheres Achasi, he owes him one Sheila. The fact is, he only owes him one animal. He owes him one animal and another animal to use. He owes him one animal outright and one animal to use. Right? The Sheila Kani Lagami, the one of Sheila he tires. The Scheres of it for the Scheres one, he just has to give him to use for those 20 days that are left, and Mahadalema, and he gives it back. Okay, so that's what he says here. All this is not mahalocha, because we said in the Mishnah, Yosef says that doesn't make sense anyway. The shul is to pay the owner, he doesn't pay the sofer. Okay, Amr Yirmiyah. Now listen to this. When you deny something when you lie, you lie. You say, I swear I'm going to eat. Let's say I swear that I ate a tuna fish sandwich yesterday and I didn't eat. I'm chayav achatas. That's what Korban Olav Yored, beginning of Vayikra, talks about it there. Korban Olav Yored, Tumas Mikdash V'Kodshav, right? Or you deny Eidos. All those chayav achatas. It's called Olav Yored. And if you're poor, you can bring a birds, or really poor, very poverty-stricken, you bring a mincha. Okay, so over here in this case, let's assume they're all telling. In the way we had the Mishnah, they're telling the truth, right? He rented it from, Reuven rented it from Shimon, and he lent it to somebody else, and it died while it was lent out to the third person. So the rule is that the shul has to pay. He died, Mesa Kadarka, he's responsible for accidents. The animal had a heart attack, fine, you have to pay for that. The shul has to pay. And the question is, does the socher keep the money, or does the original owner keep the money? They're telling the truth. Let's say they lie. They lie about what really happened. So Rav Yomia says, sometimes both the renter and the borrower, we're not going with the case now where the borrower was the owner, this whole case that Rav Zeir brought down. But he says, according to this, sometimes they'll both be chai b'chatos. That's called a shvuas b'iti per line. Some say being asham. Asham is where you lied, asham zelus. One of the 5 ashamas that we have is asham zelus, where you deny you owe money and then you admit it later on. You swear under oath that you don't owe the money, and then you do owe the money. Then you have to bring an asham zelus. Besides just it's not a chatos, it's called asham zelus. One of the ashamos. Sometimes the socher has to bring a chatos and the shul brings an asham. And sometimes the other way around. The socher brings an asham and the shul brings a chatas. Okay, so now these cases are pretty obvious, as we'll see. Okay, so firis mom and asham. If you deny money and then you admit it later on, if you swore falsely about that, you bring an asham. Biti, so some you just swore falsely, stam, you bring a chatas. Now he gives you all the 4 tziyurim. How do you have where both bring a chatas? You go in shemesa kedarka. The animal died by accident, had a heart attack. Ba'amru nensa, and they said, yes, it was an accident, right? The socher, the benkach mifter, potter, either way he's potter, because it was an accident, right? But he says what, right? What happened over here was that the case that I guess I lost the place here. Okay, so over here, what happened was it died on its own, right? And it was an accident, a heart attack, and they said it was stolen. Armed robbers came, and then list of Mizuyim, whatever. He told the wrong story. He lied about the story. Now, either way, there wouldn't have been any difference if they would have told the truth. It wouldn't have been any difference to Chiyav either. Socher benkach or benkach mifker potter. He's anyway potter because he's potter whether it was an ones or whether it was a mesa kadarka. Whether armed robbers came and took it or whether the animal had a heart attack. Either way, he's potter. He's a socher. He's only chayav and ganev and aveda. So he brings a chatos because he lied. It's just for an outright lie. I didn't have to lie. I didn't have to lie and say I ate a tuna fish sandwich yesterday. I just felt like lying. Okay, you lied under oath. Whatever the reason was, maybe that was it. So he brings the chatas. Shoel Shoel is chayiv either way. Whether the animal had a heart attack, whether it's either way, he's chayiv on damages. He's chayiv also chatas. Sometimes they're both chayiv anashim kagom. Shenigneva now you chayiv anashim when you deny money, when you swore you denied money. Go shenigneva. Let's say it was burglarized from them. Shenigneva. Oh, and they said that it died because of malach, which they're pater on. Mesimach mas malacha, they're both pater on. That's only even a shos chayiv on mesimach malacha couldn't do the work. I borrowed it to do the work. You gave me an animal that was half dead, couldn't do the work. I'm pater on that. The tervayu kafir, they're both denying money, right? The socher, it was really stolen. It was burgled. So the socher would have been chayiv to pay, but he said no, it was mesimach mas malacha. They're both denying money, right? The tervayu kafir mona, because they're chayiv to pay. Both the socher would be chayiv to pay and the shol would be chayiv to pay. The kapat nafshayu, and they pat themselves by this lie. Therefore, they are chayiv to pay. Now you might say, well, if once the animal was stolen, right, they lied about that. So they lied about that to deny money because if it was stolen, really the socher would have to pay, right? The socher would have to pay. Now, if it was in the hands of the shoel, would the socher have to pay? Presumably, he'd have to pay too. He's responsible for geneva. So the machayvik of nafshal. Socher b'chat v'shol b'ashim. How would that work out? Could go in shemesa kedarka. The animal died by accident, had a heart attack. V'amru meis machmas v'lacha, and they said it died because of work. Where the socher the party's partner anyway, whatever the reasons he's partner, it's not geneva and aveda. So he's chayav achatos because he lied. Because he said Mesa Machmas Malacha when it was Mesa Kadarka, right? Mesa Kadarka, and he lied about that. So but he wasn't denying money, he wouldn't have been chayiv anyway. He brings a chatas. Shoel the Machayiv Mesa Kadarka, he's chayiv Mesa Kadarka for kapat nafshay, and he pat himself Mesa Machlacha, he would bring korban asham. Socher ba'asham v'shoel b'chatas. How does that work out? Going shenigna, but it was actually burgled. Ba'amar Mesa Kadarka, and they lied and they said it had a heart attack. Socher with a machayv geneva, Socher's chayv geneveda of a kapat nafshay, and he's pattering himself by lying and saying Mesa Kadarka. He brings an asham. Shoel the benkach or benkach chiv machayv. Shoel's chayv whether it was geneva neveda or whether it was Mesa Kadarka. He's chayv achatos because he didn't deny money. He just told the wrong thing. What's the chiddush in all this? We know the rules of chatos and asham. What are you giving all these cases from my kamash bulam? Lapukim ram to exclude from Rami. The Amar Kol Shvusha Dayan Mashmiyan also. Any shvua that the judges, the court makes you swear, ain't chavim shvus biti. Shvus biti is only when we're discussing something and you say, didn't you have a tuna fish sandwich yesterday? I swear I didn't have a tuna fish sandwich yesterday. I did eat tuna, but not in a sandwich. So if I swear that I didn't have a tuna. I swore that I ate a tuna fish sandwich yesterday. I swore I ate that. Right? Only in a case like that are you chayav a shvus biti. A shvua that the court made you swear, that's not shvus biti. Shneimar o nefesh ki sishava levates v'sayim ki sishba me'atzva ki sishba. If a person just swears on his own, he's fighting with somebody, they're discussing something, they swear something. But if a court makes you do it, you're not chayav. Over here, the court would make you make the shvua, and therefore Rav Ami would say that you're not chayav for a chatos in these cases. Kamashma look, is not like Rami. We don't like Rami. He also brings down another reason why you could have said. You could have given a different answer of why this case was brought down over here because of Allah of Rav says of Shmuel the Shvuas Biti lesser Ela B'Yochel. It's only Shvuas Biti is only to where you could have gone both ways. You could have sworn yes or no, and this doesn't work in this case. So another reason why this case is brought down, we don't hold of Rav Ami or don't hold of Shmuel. In any case, we don't paskin like this whole thing anyway. We paskin that the shvu that the if there was really an accident, this is all if they lied. If there was really an accident in the hands of the shoel, he would be responsible to pay to the owner. That's how we hold. Tomorrow's Gemara, which we'll pick from here halfway down, is the shail of shomer shemas l'shomer. Is the shomer allowed to give it to another shomer without reshus? In our mission, we're assuming he gave it with reshus. If you say you can't give it with reshus, so then the socher was already is responsible for giving it to somebody that the owner did not approve of. So we'll learn our mission. Our mission is speaking about where he gave him permission to give it to somebody else. Have a good day.